Welcome back to the Sleepy Stoic Sanctuary, where ancient wisdom meets modern rest. Tonight, we explore one of the most profound lessons ever taught through story, the tale of King Midas and his golden touch. A wisdom teaching that reveals the difference between having wealth and being truly rich, between accumulating possessions and cultivating contentment. In the ancient kingdom of Phrygia lived a king whose name has become synonymous with wealth itself, Midas. Ruler of a prosperous realm, possessor of gold beyond counting, master of treasuries that would make other monarchs weep with envy. Yet despite his abundance, King Midas suffered from affliction more common than plague and more destructive than war, the belief that he never had enough. Each morning, Midas would walk through his palace, counting his gold, measuring his wealth, calculating his possessions. But instead of gratitude for his abundance, each inventory brought only hunger for more. If I had twice this gold, he would think, then I would be truly happy. If I possessed 3 times these treasures, then I would finally have enough. This is the disease that destroys contentment even in the midst of plenty. The inability to appreciate what we have because we are obsessed with what we lack. Midas ruled a kingdom at peace, commanded the loyalty of his people, possessed health and strength and wisdom. But none of these blessings could satisfy a heart that had learned to find its worth in accumulation rather than appreciation. Tonight you will witness what happens when our deepest desires are granted without wisdom to guide them. When we receive exactly what we think we want, only to discover that our wants themselves were the source of our suffering. You will see how the very gift that seemed to promise ultimate happiness became the curse that nearly destroyed everything that actually made life meaningful. This is not just the story of an ancient king who learned too late the difference between price and value. This is the eternal tale of every person who has ever believed that having more would make them happier, who has confused accumulation with achievement, who has discovered that the discipline of desire is more precious than the fulfillment of every wish. Settle into your bed now, close your eyes, and prepare to receive one of the most important lessons about wealth and contentment ever taught. For in the end, Midas learned what every wise person must discover, that true richness comes not from having everything you want, but from wanting nothing more than what you have. Be calm, be clear, be dangerous, and let this timeless wisdom about the golden touch begin to transform your relationship with desire itself. Take 3 deep breaths with me now, but instead of simply breathing, breathe with appreciation for the miracle that your lungs work perfectly, that your heart beats steadily, that your body rests in comfort and safety. In through your nose, hold for a moment in gratitude, and release slowly, letting appreciation for this simple blessing fill your chest. Feel your body settling into your bed. But notice the wealth that surrounds you, the softness beneath you, the warmth that protects you, the roof that shelters you, the peace that allows you rest. Your shoulders drop away from your ears as you release the tension of wanting more and embrace the abundance of having enough. Let your jaw relax, your forehead smooth, as you connect with a profound truth that King Midas learned too late, that you are already rich beyond the dreams of most humans who have ever lived. You have comfort, safety, freedom, and the leisure to rest peacefully while receiving ancient wisdom. Starting from the crown of your head, imagine a warm, golden light beginning to flow downward. This is not the false gold of greed, but the true gold of gratitude. The illumination that comes from recognizing the wealth that already exists in your life. The abundance that appears when we shift from counting what we lack to appreciating what we have. Feel this light of genuine abundance flowing through your mind, awakening you to riches that have been invisible because they were always present. The gift of consciousness, the blessing of learning, the miracle of being alive in this moment. These are treasures that no amount of gold could ever purchase. You are wealthier than you know. You have abundance beyond your recognition. You possess riches that exist not in accumulation, but in appreciation. The golden light of gratitude continues flowing down through your neck and shoulders, but as it flows, it carries away the weight of excessive wanting, the burden of believing you need more than you have. Your arms grow light as they release the strain of reaching for possessions that cannot satisfy, grasping for accumulations that cannot complete you. Feel the light warming your chest, your heart opening to receive the freedom that comes from wanting what you have, rather than having what you want. This is the secret that transforms poverty into abundance without changing a single external circumstance. The shift from scarcity thinking to appreciation consciousness. The warm light continues down through your torso, relaxing your back, your abdomen, releasing the tension that comes from measuring your worth by your possessions, from comparing your abundance to others' accumulation. You understand now that contentment is not about having everything, but about recognizing that you already have enough. Down through your hips and thighs. The liberation light brings the understanding that every desire beyond genuine need is a form of slavery. Not slavery to circumstances, but slavery to wanting itself. True freedom comes not from fulfilling every desire, but from reducing desire to match reality. Through your legs and feet, you feel completely free now, free from the exhausting burden of perpetual wanting, free from the impossible task of satisfying desires that multiply with feeding, free to appreciate the simple miracle of existing in comfort and peace. You are ready now to witness what happens when getting everything you want teaches you that wanting less is the true path to happiness. You are liberated, You are grateful. You are about to learn the most important lesson about wealth that any story can teach. Your mind grows quiet and receptive, like Midas preparing to learn the difference between artificial gold and natural abundance. You understand now that contentment is not a destination you reach by accumulating more, but a choice you make by appreciating what already surrounds you. You are grounded in this moment, yet open to the wisdom that shows how excessive desire destroys the very happiness it seeks to create. You are safe. You are abundant. You are about to witness what happens when someone receives everything they want, only to discover that wanting less would have made them infinitely richer. Like the king in our story, you have the capacity to learn from consequences without having to experience them directly. Tonight's tale will show you how Midas discovered that the golden touch he craved became the curse that taught him what truly matters. Relationships over riches, love over luxury, appreciation over accumulation. Breathe deeply now, and let your consciousness expand to receive not just tonight's cautionary tale, but the liberating wisdom within it. For this story of the golden touch is also the teaching of every person who has ever confused having with being, who has learned that the discipline of desire creates more wealth than the fulfillment of every want. In the transformation we are about to witness, you will see that true abundance flows not from getting more, but from wanting less. That genuine wealth consists not in possessing everything, but in appreciating anything. That contentment is not the reward for accumulation, but the foundation for happiness itself. Let the most important lesson about wealth and desire begin, where getting everything you want teaches you to want what you have. In his magnificent palace in Phrygia, King Midas would begin each day the same way, walking through treasure chambers that held more gold than many kingdoms possessed in their entire treasuries. Room after room gleamed with precious metals, sparkled with cut gems, overflowed with wealth that should have brought profound satisfaction to any reasonable person. But satisfaction was the one treasure that Midas could never seem to accumulate. As he counted his coins, weighed his gold, cataloged his precious stones, his mind was not filled with gratitude for his abundance, but with calculations of how much more he needed to feel truly secure, truly successful, truly happy. This is magnificent, he would tell himself. But imagine if I had twice this amount. Then I would know that I had achieved something truly significant. Then I would have proof of my worth that no one could question. A disease of perpetual wanting had infected every moment of Midas's life. When he ate from golden plates, he wondered why he couldn't afford plates made from some even more precious metal. When he wore robes embroidered with golden thread, he fantasized about robes made entirely of gold itself. When he looked upon his prosperous kingdom, he dreamed of ruling lands twice as vast, 3 times as wealthy. His servants noticed that their king seemed to take no pleasure in his feasts. no satisfaction in his accomplishments, no joy in his already extraordinary success. He was like a man dying of thirst while sitting beside a clear stream, unable to drink because he was obsessed with finding an even better source of water somewhere in the distance. The wise among his advisors understood what Midas himself could not see, that his problem was not insufficient wealth, but insatiable desire. He had confused the means with the end, believing that gold was valuable in itself, rather than understanding that wealth's only true purpose is to enable the happiness that comes from security, generosity, and the freedom to appreciate life's genuine blessings. But Midas had lost the ability to appreciate. Every treasure he possessed became invisible to him the moment he acquired it, his attention immediately shifting to the next acquisition that might finally bring the satisfaction that perpetually eluded him. This is the trap that destroys contentment even in the midst of abundance. The belief that happiness lies not in recognizing the wealth we already possess, but in accumulating wealth we do not yet have. It's a form of spiritual poverty that no amount of material wealth can ever cure, because the disease lies not in what we lack, but in our inability to appreciate what we have. And it was in this state of wealthy misery that Midas would encounter a gift that seemed to promise everything he desired, but would teach him the most valuable lesson of his life. One morning, as Midas walked through his famous rose garden, the one beauty in his kingdom that he valued for itself rather than for its monetary worth, he discovered an unusual sight. Tangled among the rose bushes, snoring lively and reeking of wine, lay a creature unlike any mortal man. This was Silenus, the satyr, oldest and wisest of the followers of Dionysus, god of wine and ecstasy. Though Silenus appeared to be nothing more than a drunken old man with the legs of a goat, he was in fact a divine being whose wisdom, when he chose to share it, surpassed that of the greatest philosophers. Now a king obsessed with wealth might have seen this intruder as a threat to his property, or at best as a nuisance to be removed by servants. But Midas, for all his flaws regarding gold, possessed genuine kindness toward those in need. Perhaps it was because his obsession with accumulation stemmed not from cruelty, but from insecurity, not from hardness of heart, but from fear of not having enough. Instead of having the satyr thrown from his gardens, Midas personally helped the creature to his feet, ordered his servants to prepare a bath and fresh clothing, and insisted that Silenus be treated as an honored guest for as long as he wished to stay. For 10 days and nights, Midas entertained the satyr with the hospitality that had made his kingdom famous throughout the Greek world. He shared his finest wines, his most delicious foods, his most comfortable accommodations. More importantly, he treated Silenus not as a curiosity or potential source of advantage, but simply as a being deserving of kindness. The satyr, accustomed to being mocked or feared by mortals, was deeply moved by this treatment. Here was a king who showed genuine generosity without expecting anything in return, who demonstrated that beneath his obsession with gold lay a heart capable of authentic compassion. When Silenus finally felt ready to return to his divine master, he revealed his true identity to Midas. "King of Phrygia," he said, "you have shown kindness to one of Dionysus's most beloved companions. The god of wine and joy will surely wish to reward such hospitality. Prepare yourself, for Dionysus himself will soon visit your palace to grant you whatever gift you desire most." As Silenus vanished into the morning mist, leaving behind only the lingering scent of wine and roses, Midas felt his heart racing with anticipation. Here was the opportunity he had dreamed of all his life. The chance to ask a god for the one gift that would solve all his problems forever. If only he had understood that his problems required not solving, but dissolving, not more wealth, but less wanting. True to Silenus's word, Dionysus himself appeared in Midas's palace that very evening, manifesting in all his divine glory. Crowned with ivy, radiant with otherworldly light, carrying the intoxicating presence of one who embodies joy, celebration, and the ecstatic appreciation of life's pleasures. King Midas, the god, spoke with a voice like wine being poured into crystal. "You have shown extraordinary kindness to my beloved companion Silenus. In gratitude for your hospitality, I offer you any gift within my power to grant. Speak your heart's deepest desire, and it shall be yours." Here was the moment that Midas had fantasized about through countless sleepless nights. A god, not just any god, but one of the 12 Olympians, stood before him, offering to fulfill his ultimate wish. His mind raced through possibilities that would make him the wealthiest, most powerful, most envied king in all the world. Without hesitation, without reflection, driven by the obsession that had consumed his thoughts for years, Midas spoke the words that he believed would bring him infinite happiness. "Great Dionysus, I wish that everything I touch would turn to gold. Let this be my gift, the golden touch that will make me richer than any mortal has ever been." Dionysus paused, his expression shifting from benevolent joy to something approaching sadness. The god could see the future that Midas, blinded by desire, could not imagine. He understood that this gift would teach lessons far more valuable than any treasure, but also more painful than any hardship the king had ever endured. "Are you certain this is what you desire?" Dionysus asked with gentle concern. Sometimes what we think we want most becomes what teaches us what we actually need. The golden touch will indeed make you wealthy beyond imagination. But wealth and happiness are not the same treasure. But Midas, convinced that the god was simply testing his resolve, insisted on his choice. "I am certain, great Dionysus. The golden touch is my heart's deepest desire. With this gift, I will never again know want or worry. I will be truly happy at last." The god nodded with the resigned wisdom of one who understands that some lessons can only be learned through experience. "So be it, King Midas. From this moment forward, Everything you touch with your hands will turn to purest gold. May this gift teach you what you truly seek." With these words, Dionysus vanished, leaving Midas alone with the power he had craved, and with consequences he had never imagined. Midas awoke the next morning with the anticipation of a child on his birthday, eager to test the divine gift that would transform his life forever. The first rays of dawn filtered through his chamber windows as he reached out tentatively to touch the bronze lamp beside his bed. The transformation was even more magnificent than he had imagined. The moment his fingers made contact, the bronze began to shimmer and change, becoming purest gold that gleamed with radiance that seemed to come from within. The craftsmanship remained perfect, but now the lamp possessed a beauty and value beyond any earthly craftsman's skill. "It works," Midas whispered in amazement, his heart pounding with excitement. "Dionysus has truly granted my wish." He moved through his chamber like a man possessed by divine inspiration, touching everything within reach. His wooden chair became a throne of solid gold. His marble table transformed into something that belonged in the halls of Olympus itself. His bronze mirror became a golden surface that reflected his image, surrounded by gleaming luxury. Each transformation filled him with deeper ecstasy. This was power beyond anything he had ever imagined. The ability to create unlimited wealth with nothing more than a touch. He would become not just the richest king in the world, but the richest human being who had ever lived. No treasure would be beyond his reach, no luxury unavailable to his desire. Racing to his gardens, Midas began touching trees, watching in wonder as bark became golden metal, while somehow maintaining the graceful curves and natural beauty of living wood. Flowers transformed into golden sculptures, so perfect they seemed about to bloom, so beautiful they surpassed any garden that had ever existed. "I am like a god myself," he laughed aloud, intoxicated by power that seemed to make him master of matter itself. "I can transform the entire world into gold. Every object I touch becomes a treasure beyond price." For hours, he wandered through his palace and grounds, transforming everything in sight, accumulating wealth at a pace that made his previous riches seem like poverty. This was the ultimate vindication of his life's philosophy, that more was always better, that wealth was the key to happiness, that accumulation could solve any problem. But as the morning sun climbed higher in the sky and his stomach began to remind him that even kings must eat, Midas was about to discover that getting everything you want can be the most effective way to learn what you actually need. The golden touch that seemed like ultimate blessing was about to reveal itself as the most educational curse any mortal had ever received. As the excitement of his morning transformations began to settle, Midas realized that his divine gift had awakened an appetite worthy of his joy. He called for his servants to prepare a feast celebrating his good fortune. The finest bread, the sweetest fruits, the most delicious delicacies his kingdom could provide. The servants, having witnessed their king's miraculous transformations throughout the palace, prepared a meal fit for the gods themselves. They arranged fresh bread still warm from the ovens, grapes purple with ripeness, honey that gleamed like liquid amber, wine aged to perfection in his deepest cellars. Midas approached the feast with the same enthusiasm he had shown for transforming his possessions. But as he reached for the first piece of bread, eager to celebrate his newfound power, something unexpected happened. The moment his fingers touched the crust, the bread hardened into solid gold, beautiful beyond description, but no longer capable of satisfying hunger. "How curious," he murmured, assuming this was simply an oversight on his part. Perhaps the divine gift required more conscious control than he had realized. He reached for a cluster of grapes, concentrating on his desire to eat rather than transform. But the result was the same. The grapes became golden sculptures, perfect in every detail, but as inedible as stones. The wine turned to liquid gold that gleamed in his cup, but could never quench thirst. The honey became metallic sweetness that looked delicious, but would break his teeth if he attempted to eat it. One by one, every item on his magnificent feast transformed at his touch into golden treasure that mocked his hunger. The very gift that had seemed to promise unlimited wealth was revealing its first limitation. He could create infinite riches, but he could no longer enjoy the simple pleasure of a meal. "This is inconvenient," Midas admitted to himself, though he was not yet ready to acknowledge that inconvenience might be the least of his problems. Surely, there must be a way to control this gift, to choose when to transform and when to simply touch. But as he experimented with different approaches, touching gently, touching firmly, touching while concentrating on different intentions, the result was always the same. Everything he touched became gold. Beautiful and valuable and completely useless for sustaining life. For the first time since receiving his wish, Midas felt a small flutter of doubt. Getting everything you want, he was beginning to discover, sometimes means losing things you never realized you needed. As Midas sat before his golden feast, struggling with hunger and growing uncertainty about his divine gift, he heard the sound that never failed to lift his spirits, his daughter's laughter echoing through the palace halls. She was his greatest treasure, more precious to him than all his gold, the one pure joy in his life that had nothing to do with wealth or accumulation. She came running into the dining hall with the innocent enthusiasm that only children possess, her face bright with excitement at seeing her father. "Papa," she called out joyfully, "the servants told me you've been granted a magical gift. Show me the wonders you can create." Midas felt his heart swell with love and pride. Here was someone who could share his joy, who would appreciate the magnitude of what had been granted to him. Without thinking, driven by paternal affection and the desire to demonstrate his power, he opened his arms to receive her embrace. "Come here, my darling daughter," he said warmly. "Let me show you the most magnificent magic the gods have ever granted to mortal man." She rushed into his arms with complete trust, throwing her small arms around his neck in the spontaneous affection that had always been their daily greeting. But the moment her skin touched his, the moment their embrace began, Midas felt the familiar shimmer of transformation beginning. "No," he whispered in horror. But it was too late. His daughter's warm, living flesh began to harden and gleam. Her bright eyes grew still and golden. Her laughter stopped mid-breath as her throat became metallic. Her embrace, which had always been the softest, most precious thing in his world, became cold and hard and eternally motionless. In seconds, his beloved daughter had become the most beautiful golden statue ever created. Every detail perfect, every feature preserved, but no longer alive, no longer able to laugh or speak or return his love. She was now the most valuable object in his palace and the most worthless thing in his world. Midas fell to his knees before the golden figure of his child, understanding for the first time the true cost of getting everything you want. All the gold in the world could not purchase a single moment of his daughter's laughter. All the wealth he had accumulated through his gift was nothing compared to the treasure he had just lost through the same power. "What have I done?" he cried out in anguish. "What is all the gold in the world worth if I cannot hold my child, cannot hear her voice, cannot see her smile?" In that moment of ultimate loss, King Midas finally understood the difference between having wealth and being truly rich. Alone in his dining hall, with the golden statue that had once been his living, breathing daughter, Midas experienced a transformation more profound than any magic Dionysus had granted. The scales of false understanding fell from his eyes, and he saw his life, his values, his obsessions, his very identity with clarity that was as painful as it was illuminating. Every piece of gold in his palace, every treasure he had accumulated, every wealth he had craved, suddenly revealed itself as worthless metal compared to a single moment of his daughter's living presence. The golden touch that had seemed like ultimate blessing was revealed as the ultimate curse. The power to transform everything valuable into something worthless, everything living into something dead. "Great Dionysus," he prayed with desperate sincerity, "I understand now why you hesitated to grant my wish. I see the wisdom I was too blind to perceive. I have been the poorest king who ever lived, not because I lacked gold, but because I lacked appreciation for what I already possessed." His prayer came from a heart broken open by loss, but made wise by suffering. I thought wealth meant having more than I needed. I now understand that wealth means needing less than I have. I thought happiness came from accumulation. I now know it comes from appreciation. I thought the golden touch would make me rich. Instead, it has shown me that I was already rich beyond measure, but too foolish to see it. Through his tears, Midas continued his desperate plea. "If you have any mercy, great God, please reverse this gift that has become a curse. Take back the golden touch that has taken everything that truly mattered to me. I would rather be the poorest peasant with my living daughter than the richest king with only her golden statue. I understand now that true wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. That genuine abundance comes not from accumulating more, but from appreciating what is already present. That the richest people are not those who have everything they want, but those who want nothing more than what they have." In this moment of ultimate despair, Midas had gained something more valuable than any treasure: wisdom about the nature of true wealth. He had learned through loss what he could never have learned through gain: that contentment is not the reward for accumulation, but the foundation for happiness itself. Now he could only pray that this wisdom had not come too late to save what mattered most. As if summoned by the sincerity of Midas's repentance, Dionysus appeared once again in the palace hall. But this time, his presence carried not the joy of granting wishes, but the compassion of divine mercy, responding to genuine wisdom gained through suffering. "King Midas," the god spoke with gentle understanding, "I hear in your prayer something that was absent from your original wish: wisdom about the true nature of wealth. You have learned what many mortals never discover, that getting everything you want can be the most effective way to understand what you actually need." Midas looked up from his prayers with eyes full of tears and newfound understanding. "Great Dionysus, I have been the greatest fool who ever lived. I possessed everything that makes life truly rich: health, safety, a peaceful kingdom, the love of my daughter. But I was blind to these treasures because I was obsessed with accumulating more gold. Your suffering has not been punishment," Dionysus replied with divine compassion, "but education. The golden touch was never meant to make you wealthy, but to teach you that you were wealthy already. Sometimes, the gods must grant our desires to show us how misguided those desires were." The god's expression softened as he looked upon the golden statue of Midas's daughter. But learning wisdom through loss is a harsh teacher, and you have learned your lesson thoroughly. Therefore, I will grant you something more valuable than any wish: the chance to undo the consequences of your misguided desire. Hope flickered in Midas's heart for the first time since his daughter's transformation. Is it possible? Can you restore what the golden touch destroyed? Go to the river Pactolus at dawn, Dionysus instructed. Bathe in its waters and the golden touch will be washed away. But more than that, anything you touched that was once alive can be restored to its natural state by the same waters. Your daughter, your gardens, everything that truly lived can live again. But remember this lesson always, the god continued with the wisdom of eternal understanding. True wealth cannot be counted in gold, only in gratitude. Genuine abundance comes not from having everything you want, but from wanting nothing more than what you have. Let this transformation of your touch become a transformation of your heart. With these words of redemption and wisdom, Dionysus vanished, leaving Midas with the most precious gift of all, a second chance to appreciate the treasures he had always possessed. At the first light of dawn, Midas made his way to the river Pactolus with a heart full of hope and hard-won wisdom. The river flowed clear and strong, its waters carrying the promise of redemption for those who had learned to value what truly mattered in life. Without hesitation, Midas waded into the current and submerged himself completely in the healing waters. He felt the golden touch being washed away like dirt from his skin, like fever from his body, like blindness from his eyes. The power that had seemed like a blessing but proved to be a curse dissolved into the river, carried away by waters that understood the difference between true and false treasure. When he emerged from the Pactolus, Midas was no longer the man who could turn everything to gold. He was something far more valuable, a person who understood that the ability to appreciate was worth infinitely more than the power to accumulate. Racing back to his palace with urgency born of desperate love, Midas carried a pitcher of the sacred water to where his daughter's golden statue stood motionless and beautiful and heartbreakingly still. With hands that trembled with hope and fear, he poured the river water over the golden form that had once been his greatest treasure. The transformation was more beautiful than any magic he had ever witnessed. The hard gold began to soften. The metallic gleam began to warm. The perfect stillness began to stir with returning life. Color flowed back into cheeks that had been golden metal moments before. Warmth returned to skin that had been cold treasure. Breath returned to lungs that had been precious metal. And then, the sound that Midas had feared he would never hear again. His daughter's laughter, more precious than all the gold that had ever been mined from the earth, more valuable than every treasure that had ever been accumulated by mortal hands. "Papa," she cried out, throwing her arms around him in an embrace that was soft and warm and alive. "I had the strangest dream about being made of gold." Midas held her close, understanding that he was now holding the only treasure that truly mattered, the only wealth that could bring genuine happiness, the only riches that could satisfy the human heart. He was no longer the man who could create infinite gold, but he was infinitely richer than he had ever been before. The golden touch was gone, but something far more valuable had taken its place. The wisdom to appreciate the treasures he had always possessed. In the days that followed his restoration, Midas discovered a richness he had never known existed. The wealth that comes from appreciating what you already have, rather than craving what you lack. Every simple pleasure became a treasure. Every ordinary moment became a gift. Every basic blessing became a source of profound contentment. When he ate his meals, he savored not just the flavors, but the miracle that he could taste at all. That food could nourish his body and bring pleasure to his senses. When he walked through his gardens, he marveled not at what they were worth, but at their beauty, their fragrance, their testament to life's natural abundance. Most precious of all were the moments with his daughter. Conversations that had no purpose except connection. Embraces that created no wealth except the treasure of love. Laughter that accumulated nothing except joy. He understood now that these had always been his greatest riches, but he had been too obsessed with counting gold to notice the abundance that surrounded him. The kingdom flourished under Midas's transformed leadership. No longer focused solely on accumulating wealth, he began to appreciate and nurture what he already possessed. His people, his land, his culture, all became treasures worthy of care and gratitude, rather than merely sources of revenue. Visitors to his court noticed that King Midas seemed different from other wealthy rulers. He possessed great riches, but he was not possessed by them. He could enjoy luxury without needing excess. He appreciated abundance without demanding infinity. He had learned a secret that transforms any amount of wealth into enough. The discipline of desire that comes from understanding the difference between having and being. In quiet moments, Midas would reflect on the profound lesson his golden touch had taught him. Getting everything he wanted had shown him that he already had everything he needed. The curse that seemed to take away his happiness had actually revealed where his happiness had always resided, not in accumulation, but in appreciation. He established new customs in his kingdom, daily practices of gratitude, regular celebrations of simple pleasures, ceremonies that honored relationships over riches. His palace became known not for its gold, but for its contentment, not for its treasures, but for its wisdom. And when other kings came to him seeking the secret of true wealth, Midas would smile and share the lesson that had cost him so much to learn. The richest people are not those who have everything they want, but those who want nothing more than what they have. True abundance is not measured by how much you can accumulate, but by how little you need to be happy. The golden touch had been washed away, but the golden wisdom remained forever. And so King Midas learned the most valuable lesson any human can discover, that true wealth has nothing to do with accumulation and everything to do with appreciation. That genuine abundance flows not from having more, but from wanting less. That the richest life is not the one that possesses everything, but the one that finds contentment in anything. As Midas discovered through his golden touch, getting everything we want often teaches us that what we wanted was not what we needed. The discipline of desire creates more wealth than the fulfillment of every wish. Contentment is not the reward for accumulation, but the foundation for happiness itself. Let the profound wisdom of tonight's tale settle into your heart as you drift towards sleep. Feel the wealth that already surrounds you, the comfort of your bed, the safety of your shelter, the gift of peaceful rest. You are richer than you know, more abundant than you realize, more wealthy than most humans who have ever lived. Rest now in the golden truth that contentment is the greatest treasure, gratitude the most precious possession, and appreciation the source of all genuine wealth.
you.